everyone. Welcome back to The Victim's Voice. I am your host, Lori B. This week's episode is going to be a little different than normal, but I feel it is necessary for people to hear, so maybe it will help other grieving families not to fall into the same trap as the ones we will talk about today. The person and organization that I'm going to be talking about today states that part of her job is to expose corrupt individuals, which in reality is her making TikTok videos and podcast episodes, harassing, calling names, and making fun of people. She tries to destroy people's livelihoods and the reputations of police officers, politicians, magistrates, school superintendents, teachers, coaches, and others by bullying. She always claims to have proof of the allegations she makes, yet never provides it when asked. Instead, she deletes people's comments and blocks them if they question her at all. Her accusations are actually baseless opinions of hers that she states as facts. I am sure she wouldn't like it if someone picked apart her or her husband's past and revealed every mistake they ever made on social media platforms. Yet this is what she does every day. She also claims to be an advocate for families who have lost loved ones. Here is the definition of a victim advocate. Victim advocates are trained to support victims of crime. They offer emotional support, victims' rights information, help in finding needed resources, and assistance in filling out crime victim-related forms. Our advocates frequently accompany victims and their family members through the crime justice proceedings. The goal of a victim advocate is to provide non-judgmental, social, informational, and practical support to all crime victims and survivors, promote safety, healing, justice, and rights for victims and survivors, ensure a voice for victims and survivors through the implementation of victim-centered policies and practices. An advocate involved with crime victims needs to be able to communicate effectively with them, as well as with government officials and representatives of nonprofit organizations. They should be able to explain complicated concepts in plain language and maintain victim confidentiality when dealing with bureaucracy. A victim advocate's training must focus on learning about the criminal justice system of the area they work in on all levels. In addition, they should learn to navigate the bureaucracy of government agencies and nonprofit organizations. Communication effectively, empathy, and training. These are three of the main requirements of an advocate, and Lindsay of Can't Stop Won't Stop displays none of these. First of all, let's talk about this organization, or business if that's what you want to call it. Can't Stop Won't Stop LLC is run by a woman named Lindsay. Her husband, Dwayne's sister, Egypt Covington, was killed in 2017 by some guys who were trying to steal some weed from the neighbor, but went in through the wrong door. Within a year after her death, Dwayne met Lindsay. He told her about his sister's murder, and she became obsessed with Egypt. Wearing her clothes, getting tattoos that supposedly represent Egypt, and painting a wall in her house orange, which was Egypt's favorite color, because supposedly Egypt told them through a psychic medium to do it to honor her. She even says her children, who of course never knew Egypt either, have a spiritual relationship with her. She decided to try to play detective and spokesperson for Egypt and treated Egypt's loved ones horribly. She and her followers even tried to say at one point that a certain family member had killed Egypt, which caused that family member to be harassed and even receive death threats. She tried to take over and take credit for anything that had to do with Egypt's case. She made Justice for Egypt shirts and signs and had a couple of Justice for Egypt marches. She met with the township police that were in charge of the investigation and questioned them on how well they were doing their job. She was rude and bullied everyone, and when the state police took over the case in 2021 and solved it, Lindsay took full credit for it getting into the Michigan State Police hands. Little did most people know, the FBI and the state police had already been contacted by Van Buren Township Police to come in and assist. It had absolutely nothing to do with Lindsay at all. But because of the timing of everything, she was able to take credit and convince people it was because of her marches and questioning of the police that it happened. She created her podcast and began to get followers who believed that she was responsible for the case being solved. TV stations interviewed her, and she was on an episode of Dateline with Dwayne and talked about all she had done to get the case solved. She has continued to use Egypt's name for the last 3 years to gain clout, followers, likes, and views on her various social media platforms. She claims to love Egypt, whom she never met, all while bashing Egypt's family and friends, including her dad, stepmom, brothers, sisters, niece, and even Egypt's best friend, Lenny. She has harassed and re-victimized the Covington family, all while professing her love for her beloved Egypt. She has used her false claims of getting Egypt's case solved to get other families who have lost loved ones to request help from her. I'm going to play a clip now of Lindsay, her husband Dwayne, and another podcaster making a musical, as they called it, describing Egypt's horrific murder.
There was shit all over the floor. And they do not lock the windows. They don't even close them when they go out of town. But somehow the guilty person must have known her passcode. Even though the window was open. Come on, Dwayne.
This is a musical. I was talking about a musical. I know.
Plenty of people would have the passcode, but nobody cares about all the other people who have the passcode. Or the fact that when you knock, somebody answers. Hold on, say that again. I said plenty of people would have had the passcode, but nobody cares about all the other people who have the passcode. And about the fact that sometimes when you knock, you answer. Right. So you don't have to have a key to not have no sign of fourth century. It's just knock, knock, knock. Hello? You smell. Did you just burp? God, that was terrible.
It was a burger.
Terrible. I would also like to point out that there were 2 doors. One didn't have a passcode. One to the left was Egypt. The one in the back was also Egypt. One was made of mostly glass. There was pink stuff on the wall that matched the pink stuff in her hair. That was face down on the ground, so how did it get there?
You know, we're going to catch some flag for this one.
Okay. They turned it into a musical. This is a murder investigation. You know how many people are going to remember about the pink stuff now? Fucking everybody on this.
Yes, I know.
I made it rhyme.
And those people,
Pink stuff in her hair. How did it get there?
they refer to my sister as the dead person, too.
Oh my gosh. That happened. That happened. Dwayne let it out. He's been sitting on that one for a while. Yeah, we have that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we might turn the case into a musical, but if people are going to listen to the musical, we're going to turn it into a musical.
At least she has a name.
Egypt Covington was shot in her house.
Oh,
Did this sound like someone who loves Egypt or someone who is grieving their loved one? The people who knew and loved Egypt would not think of her murder as something to laugh and make fun of. I'm going to read a statement from Kristen now, who is Egypt Covington's stepmom. I did an episode on Egypt if you're not familiar with her case. Kristen is married to Egypt's dad, Chuck. According to Egypt's friends and family, she was very much a daddy's girl. Kristen and Egypt were also very close. One of the things they loved doing together was yoga. Chuck and Kristen, after going through the worst experience that parents could go through, then have to be victims of Lindsay's cruel behavior and bullying, and in their own home to top it off. Here is what Kristen had to say about her experience with Lindsay. Lindsay had sent an email out to me and Lindsay Briley, Egypt's best friend, requesting the opportunity to meet at our house to discuss some questions that she had. She, Tina, who is Egypt's mom, and Dwayne had hired a private investigator to look into Egypt's case. They were doing this to protect Dwayne's good friend Kenny, who was a suspect in her murder. The private investigator had broke into the home of Stephen and Megan, who lived next door to Egypt. Lindsay was using the guise of wanting to understand more about Egypt and the family. Lindsay had never met Egypt, and from what I understand, she met Dwayne in a bar after Egypt's death. She became very obsessed with Egypt and with the family, so much so that she invited herself to a Tigers game where Egypt's beer was going to be announced. Dwayne asked me and Chuck if Lindsay could please attend since he was unable to go. We allowed her to join, and she even brought her father. Fast forward to when she sent the email to be invited into our home. I made dinner, and she immediately began to question Lindsay Briley on a financial situation that involved Egypt paying a family member's bills. Lindsay, who also goes by Lenny, confirmed that this was correct. I will not say who the family member was, but they did not live in my house, and they were not any of her siblings. Lindsay Brink became angry and told Lenny that she was lying, even though Chuck and I confirmed this was the truth. She then began to tell us that she knew people on the police force and that she would have the evidence in Egypt's case thrown out if Chuck and myself did not speak to Stephen and Megan and have them drop the charges against their PI. I could not believe she would use such a threat. This was later in the conversation, understand? She was already calling us liars on anything we would say regarding Egypt and was yelling. Chuck was trying to speak to Dwayne, and she kept interrupting. Chuck, after the third time of telling her that he was trying to speak to his son, finally told her to sit down and shut up. She stood up, put her finger in Chuck's face, and said, "You are too fucking black for me. Shut the fuck up." Got her keys, and left. Since then, she has had her followers send us death threats and nasty messages on Facebook, text, and Messenger. Right now, none of Dwayne's brothers or sisters speak to him. He has no family relationships, nor does Lindsay. To me, that speaks volumes. Chris Covington. I'm so sorry, Chris, Chuck, and the rest of your family, and Lenny, and all of Egypt's true friends, for having to deal with being bullied and threatened by such a narcissistic person, all while grieving the loss of your Egypt. What kind of person could do this to a family and then turn around and pretend to care about the loved one that they lost? It's a slap in the face to everyone who knew and loved Egypt Covington. In reality, Lindsay has no training or licensing to do anything more than anyone else could do. The only talent she has is running her mouth, bullying, and trying to take advantage of grieving families. Oh, and her new thing? Making TikTok videos and trying to ruin the lives and livelihoods of upstanding professionals. In fact, here is a message from Center County Magistrate's wife about the bullying that she and her husband have endured by Lindsay. Here is what she had to say. I've been debating whether to address the vicious attacks against me and now my husband. There is a huge part of me that wants to ignore her and her little band of keyboard warriors. But then I think that means I'm letting a bully win. I don't care about our personal past mistakes. I care when she starts insinuating that my husband is somehow crooked or corrupt. He's not. He's the fairest man I've ever met. 3 of her biggest supporters that I have talked to have said that. People think that they can separate their support of her with the rest of this town, and I don't believe you can. She is trying to ruin lives, and I don't like staying silent about it because of the fear that she'll just bully people more and make up more lies. I'm simply telling people, if you support her in any way, no matter how you try to justify it, you are supporting a bully. You support a woman who has absolutely no ties to our community, who is trying to destroy it. If you choose to do that, I won't want to talk to you or consider you a friend, and I think that's understandable. I am uncomfortable around people who are supporting her and still trying to talk to me or be my friend. That's it. If you see I unfriend you on Facebook, or if I say to you, I'm uncomfortable around you right now, respect it and let it go. It's coming time for our community to make a choice, and it needs to be to stop supporting her and her bullying, mean tactics. She's trying to hurt people for no reason. I thought I'd be able to keep quiet after the last post I made and not give her any more of my time or energy, but it's getting to be too much. I don't want to engage with her. I think she is a little unstable and not trustworthy. Thank you to the ones who reach out, who continue to support me. It's not easy, but I'm telling myself that we know who we are, and our friends, and most importantly, our families do too. And that's all that matters. How can Lindsay make numerous TikToks and podcasts about people that she doesn't know, trying to dig up every mistake they have ever made in their life, some true and some rumors, claim to have evidence, but when asked for the evidence, ignores the person who asked, and then blast it all over social media and calls it a business? Yet when people call her out or expose her, it is considered by her and her followers to be harassment, stalking, defamation, or bullying. What's the difference? Why is it okay for Lindsay to try to ruin the lives of people she doesn't even know, but when something is said about her, she plays the victim? I'm sure her and her husband have some skeletons that they wouldn't want to be exposed. Lindsay has harassed not only me, but numerous other people for having their own opinions on certain matters and not just believing her narrative. She has mentioned myself and others on her podcast and accused us of things that aren't true while twisting the story around to make her out to be the victim. That is another reason I am making this episode. I will go through everything from the beginning and tell the truth and provide facts and proof of what I say. Can't Stop, Won't Stop LLC is located in Michigan, and Lindsay claims, according to Instagram, to be an entrepreneur, podcaster, true crime advocate, investigative journalist, and a warrior for justice. Well, we know for sure that Lindsay does have a podcast. At first, it was about the victims. It was when she covered Tanner Barton's case, at least. But since then, it's just another platform to bully and harass people, which she calls exposing people. Her exposure consists of name-calling, making fun of, and calling people out for things such as spelling something wrong. Her previous job history includes being a yoga teacher, a substitute grade school teacher, and a divorce coach. I can find no evidence she is licensed in this. She did, however, get a divorce, so I guess that makes her educated enough to be a coach. She is not an advocate or investigative journalist. She has no licensing or credentials in criminology, victimology, social work, or criminal justice. She did minor in English, however, and is great at correcting your grammar and punctuation. Here is how I got involved in all of this. I listened to another podcaster series about Egypt's murder. Egypt's story and the kind of person she was really touched my heart, so I continued to follow any pages that gave updates on her case. One of those pages was run by Lindsay. The podcaster was supposed to help Lindsay start her own podcast, but then they had a falling out. From what Lindsay said, it was because the other podcaster was separated from her husband at the time and had gone on a few dates with Lindsay's brother, but then she and her husband reconciled, and Lindsay got mad and started bad-mouthing her for dumping her brother. Lindsay continued on to create a podcast on her own, which I followed to keep up with Egypt's story. She then started her series on Tanner Barton's death, which I also listened to. After she finished Tanner's story, though, things changed. This is when she started making fun of people and bullying people, and in her words, exposing them. I started my podcast in July of 2022. I knew that I wanted to share Egypt's story in one of my episodes. When I decided to do it in December of last year, they had just arrested 3 people for the murder, and they were going to trial eventually. So I reached out to Lindsay and asked her if she thought it would be okay for me to do my episode on Egypt. She had started doing a series on Egypt on her podcast, but was asked to stop by the prosecutor until the trials were over. She said it was okay for me to do an episode since I wasn't close to the case like she was, and asked if I would be willing to send her a copy of the script before publishing it to make sure I had all the correct information. I said, of course. That was the first time and the only time I have ever talked to Lindsay. I only knew her version of the family dynamics and what she supposedly did to get Egypt's case solved by what she had said in her lives and her podcast episodes. Therefore, I did not know the whole story, the true story. I only knew Lindsay's narrative. I would like to extend an apology to the Covington family and Egypt's true friends for ever believing a word Lindsay said. Well, I wrote the script for my episode on Egypt and I sent it to her. She messaged me a couple days later on January 2nd of this year and asked if I had time to talk. I told her I did, and we were on the phone for 58 minutes and 46 seconds, going over every line of the script I had written. She wasn't making sure I had the most current information, though. She was making sure I made her sound wonderful in every aspect, and like she was the victim of the family's hostility against her, and that she had basically solved Egypt's case, while the rest of Egypt's family sat back and did nothing. She asked me to change things that didn't make her sound the best, even though she admitted it was the truth. She then told me to let her know when I published it, and she would share it to her platforms. About a week later, I published it and sent the episode to her in Facebook Messenger. She saw my message, yet never responded to it, and also never bothered sharing it either. In fact, I'm not sure if she even bothered listening to it. Maybe she did listen to it, and she didn't like the version I published. I don't know, because I never heard from her again. I also wanted to make sure my information is true and accurate, and I didn't feel comfortable including some of the information that she gave me. After that, I felt like she just used me to get her name out there and wanted to control the narrative of my podcast like she does on her own platforms. Fast forward to the end of February 2023. I see a post of someone burning a Can't Stop, Won't Stop shirt. I realize it is Michelle Barton, Tanner Barton's mom. I knew that Lindsay was supposed to be helping Michelle with Tanner's case, so I knew something must have happened and it wasn't good. I listened to Lindsay's live that Sunday and found out what happened, or at least Lindsay's version of what happened, and it was just plain disgusting. In her live, Lindsay said she had decided she needed to start making money because they have 3 kids that need to eat, according to Dwayne. So she was having all families sign a licensing agreement that stated if there was ever a third-party deal that resulted in money being made off of a case, that Lindsay and only Lindsay would get all monetary gain from it. That would give her complete control over any media outlet covering the case. Then she proceeded to say that she had spent $11,212 on Tanner's case out of her pocket. She made Michelle sound like a charity case that couldn't afford to pay for it herself. This contradicts what she says in every episode of her podcast. She says that they use the money from donations and from people subscribing to their Patreon to pay for case files, FOIA requests, marches, and traveling expenses to meet families. So why is she saying now that it came out of her pocket? She also said that she didn't trust this new person that Michelle had working on Tanner's case. Well, in my opinion, as long as Michelle trusts the person, that's all that matters. It's her deceased son and her deceased son's case files. Lindsay said she was just trying to protect all the work that she had done. But Michelle refused to sign the agreement, and that made Lindsay mad. I reached out to Michelle. I already knew Lindsay only told her narrative, and that most of the time it was lacking truth or it was twisted to make her sound like the victim. When I talked to Michelle, I got the full story, and she showed proof through screenshots of conversations with Lindsay, which I have and I will post on the Victim's Voice Facebook and Instagram pages. Either way, Lindsay was wrong because you can't be retroactive when it comes to an agreement. If she wants future families to sign an agreement, that's one thing. But you can't go back and change the original agreement from a previous case she was working on, especially when she hadn't touched the case in over a year. Michelle also told me that Lindsay was in possession of Tanner's medical records, which were not part of the case file and not something that she had spent any money on. Still has not returned those to Michelle to date. Michelle stated that when the files were first obtained, she had offered to pay the entire cost, but Lindsay insisted that they would both pay half. Later on, she changed her mind and said that Can't Stop, Won't Stop had gotten a lot of donations, and she was proud to say that those donations would be paying for the case files. If that's the case, then the money did not come out of her pocket, like she told everyone it did. Michelle had asked Lindsay for the case files the first time back in October of 2022. Michelle had found someone with licensing and credentials who thought they might be able to help her get her case reopened. Michelle at this point was not kicking Lindsay off of Tanner's case. She thought Lindsay and this new person could work together. Lindsay did not respond back for 2 months. Finally, on December 6, 2022, Lindsay told her that Dwayne would download the files onto a drive and she would mail it to her. 2 months went by again, and Michelle hadn't heard anything from Lindsay. Michelle contacted her once again in February of this year, and that's when the mention of a licensing agreement was made. Michelle said she wasn't signing anything and was not trying to make money off of her son's case and didn't expect anyone else to either. When Michelle said she wasn't signing the document, Lindsay said, quote, "Please do not contact me again. I will provide proof of these messages on the Victim's Voice Facebook page." What kind of victim advocate would treat a grieving mother this way? It's plain disgusting. Once people started hearing about what Can't Stop, Won't Stop LLC had done to Michelle, other people started coming out and telling their experiences with Lindsay and the company. It seemed that Lindsay had promised many people to help with their loved one's case, but they would ignore all messages and calls after receiving all of the information on the case. Here is a statement from one grieving mother who had put her trust in Lindsay. My son, Alex Van Delsen, was found deceased February 9, 2021, under suspicious circumstances, despite the police ruling within 3 hours of finding him. I had not known at the time how badly the police would lie to families and the games that they would play. However, I quickly found out. Along my journey to the truth, I encountered a lot of people. Sadly, some not so good people, and Lindsay is one of those. My niece told me of her group, Can't Stop, Won't Stop. My niece had even sent Alex's information to her. I later contacted Lindsay, and she said she had received the info previously, but since it wasn't from family, she didn't look into it. Not sure why a niece would not be considered family. Anyway, at that point, she offered to assist in his case, helping me retrieve documents from the police and coroner that were being withheld from us, to do a podcast on Alex to help spread awareness of his case, and later she even offered to come to his balloon release and help advertise for it, none of which occurred. We had one phone conversation in which I shipped, at my expense, her copies of the body cam footage I had received. She promised to view it, but to my knowledge, she never did. Months and months went by. I watched their lives every Sunday, and if I commented, she'd mention Alex and sometimes mention plans of helping with his case, but that's as far as it went. She also offered to help me get reimbursed for the overcharges from the local police. She did not do that either. There's no way to describe losing a child. There's no pain that compares, no trauma like it. However, people like Lindsay escalate those feelings by making promises they never intend to keep. I sent numerous emails asking for a little guidance of whom to contact and how to go about certain things, such as requesting documentation and things to that effect, since in her lives she constantly stated she knew how to go about doing those things. Those emails went unanswered for months and months. To date, still no answer. Lindsay also chose to add Alex's name to her merch without asking me first. And while at first I was disappointed she didn't ask, I was also happy his name was out there for people to see. But he continued having the nagging feeling about her not asking first. Everyone else I had dealt with asked before using his photos or name. After watching more of her lives and then her promise to attend his balloon release, but being a no-show, it made me even more uncomfortable that she had his name on her merch. It was like she wanted his name there just in case I seceded and she could claim that she helped, all while she was never actually helping me with anything. The fact that she was doing so much for Tanner's case, or at least I thought she was at the time, was what kept me thinking I was being paranoid about my feelings for her and what she was doing until I found out what was really going on. I've had people reach out and offer to help and then not do so. A lot. But she went to a great extent and drug it out a lot longer than anyone else. In the 2 years I've been fighting this, she has undoubtedly been the worst. While I've had some offer to help and then disappear, never answering me again, I've had some offer to help, then turn around and say no, that they can't. Lindsay, however, chose to keep promising to help over and over while never actually doing anything. It felt like she was just keeping me on the hook in case she ever got around to it, or if I succeeded in anything, she could try to take credit for it. Here is another statement from a stepfather trying to get justice for his stepdaughter. My name is Mark Tate. I'm the stepfather of Tabitha Shuck Raines. She was murdered in October 2002 in Tipton County, Indiana, and was disposed of in the creek inside the city park. They made it look like she was killed in the park, even though there was no evidence to prove that she was. I've been fighting for her justice for 21 years. In 2021, I met Lindsay and Dwayne from Can't Stop, Won't Stop, LLC at the March for Justice in Kokomo, Indiana. Lindsay already knew about me and Tabitha's story through Michelle Barton, Tanner Barton's mother. I submitted my 2 CDs of information that I have on Tabitha's murder to Can't Stop, Won't Stop's mailing address, and Lindsay said she would go through it and get it into a binder that we could submit to the state of Indiana to try to get her case reopened. After she did that, she was supposed to get back to me and make plans to go with me and my family to the Indiana State Superintendent and present him the binder in an attempt to get to reinvestigate Tabitha's case. We managed to stay in contact for the first few months, but then she got involved with a case from Pennsylvania, which led her to start exposing people and pretty much dropped Tabitha's case. She didn't bother telling me she wasn't going to help me with Tabitha's case. There was just no contact for months. She still has all of the information that I submitted to her. I have the master copies, but that is still my information on my stepdaughter's case, and she hasn't even offered to give them back to me or mail it back to me. I have blocked her on Facebook and Messenger because of numerous attempts of trying to talk to her and no response. She would not answer any questions that I typed into a comment on one of her live streams. That is when every attempt was done to try to get me to talk to them in person instead of just answering questions via typed in messenger to her. Dwayne, her husband, as well attempted to talk to me, but just as with Lindsay, would not answer questions if I typed it in a message to him. It's like they didn't want anything in writing that could be used as proof of what was said. They both insisted that I talk to them on the phone. I've seen the documentation from Michelle Barton on what she has dealt with her son Tanner Barton's murder investigation. Lindsay and Dwayne have failed Michelle and her family, as well as me and my family. I won't let them sway my thinking. I've been around this stuff for 20 years. I don't have time for people using people in the manner I'm seeing from Lindsay and Dwayne and numerous people watching Egypt Covington's murder case unfold. Thank you for what you do. No family, victim of murder or not, deserves this kind of treatment from so-called advocates. Sincerely yours, Mark Tate, the voice of Tabitha Shuck Rains. I also had a recorded conversation with Michelle Barton that I will publish along with these episodes. She will give her insight to some of the things that Lindsay has said. Thank you, Michelle, Jennifer, and Mark, for sharing your stories. We hope your children finally get the justice they deserve. I will be covering Tabitha, Alex, and Tanner's stories in upcoming episodes. Here are 3 different families that we know of that have given Lindsay all of the information that they have in their loved one's case, just to have her turn around and stop all communication once she receives it. What is she doing with all of the documentation these families have given her? If she isn't going to help them, then she needs to give them their files back. Lindsay says anything to get families to trust her. When they are trying to find help and can't get any, they are willing to trust anyone, and that's when Lindsay sinks her claws into them. Lindsay wants recognition like she managed to get herself in Egypt's case. If she doesn't think a case is going to bring her that kind of recognition, then she moves on to the next, leaving that grieving family high and dry without the documents that they had given her. On March 1st of this year, at 6:25 p.m., I got a message from Lindsay on Messenger that just said, "Whoa." That's it. Whoa. At 6:27 p.m., my phone rang. It was Lindsay. Maybe she was calling because she had finally listened to my episode on Egypt after 2 months of no reply. But nope, that probably wasn't it. I didn't answer the first call as I was getting my kids ready for bed. So she calls again at 6:39 p.m. It must be really important if she is blowing up my phone and wanting me to answer her. She can ignore calls and questions on social media, but when she is ready to talk, you better answer. This time my wife, Brandy, answered the phone and told her I was getting the kids ready for bed and laying them down, and asked her if there was anything she could help her with. She very rudely said, "No, you're not, Lori," and hung up. At this point, I had a good idea why she was calling. She had seen me stating my opinion on Michelle's post and saying that she was wrong for what she was doing, which, number one, I have a right to my own opinion. I don't have to answer to anyone about it, especially someone I don't know that I have talked to once and that calls when it benefits her. I sent her a message in January and got no response. But now, once again, it is something that affects her, so she wants to blow my phone up. I never called her back because I didn't feel I needed to explain myself to her or anyone else. I have a right to my opinion, and I have freedom of speech, which is something that she preaches all the time. Who is she to question what I think is right? Well, a little while later, I received a text message from Lindsay. Wow, she really wanted to talk to me now. She said, quote, "I am going to be talking about you in an upcoming episode on Can't Stop, Won't Stop, her podcast. Would you like to comment?" Well, first of all, don't I need to know what you are going to be saying about me in order to comment on something? I went ahead and guessed why she was wanting to talk to me and told her that she was doing to Michelle was wrong on so many levels, and I have a right to that opinion. That to keep a grieving mother's deceased son's case file was disgusting, and she should be ashamed of herself. A few days later, her podcast aired, and wow, was it full of lies and twisted facts to fit the Lindsay is a victim narrative. She had gone on people's social media pages and gathered up comments and bashed people, including her own mother-in-law. She read one person's comments while playing some weird circus-type music in the background, as if trying to make the person who had commented sound like a joke, when in fact the only person who sounded like a joke was Lindsay. I was next in line for her to bash. She said I went on other pages talking shit about her when in reality I wasn't talking shit. I was agreeing with Michelle. that what Lindsay was doing was wrong. I had no problem telling Lindsay this, as I did when I messaged her when she asked for a comment. But of course, she didn't mention those messages. In fact, she said she heard nothing from me, which is an absolute lie. She didn't bother to share the 3 messages I sent her because they made her look bad and didn't fit her narrative. She then said she reached out to me asking why I would say what I said after we had just recently talked for over an hour, and that I was so happy to talk to her and Dwayne, and complimented their work with families. Well, that's a bunch of bold-faced lies. Once again, she messaged me one word that said whoa, called me twice, and then asked if I wanted to comment on her podcast that was featuring me, even though I didn't know what it was about. And yes, we talked for 58 minutes and 46 seconds at the beginning of January because she wanted to turn my podcast episode into her narrative of lies. I never complimented them or said I was excited to talk to them. She then said she was told by my wife, Lisa, which is not her name. Her name is Brandy. I know how it's easy to get those 2 names confused. That I was putting the kids to bed and that they must be exhausted because she never did get that call back. She is correct. I did not call her back because I don't want that kind of toxic person in my life or even in my ear. However, I did send her several messages telling her exactly what I thought of her and what she was doing to Michelle. I guess she didn't see those. She continued to talk about other people whom she called and who never called her back. This is the same person who promises people she will work on their loved ones' cases, but then never returns phone calls, messages, or emails, and completely ignored families she promised to help. But when Lindsay decides to pick up the phone because the truth is coming out about her and it doesn't make her look good, then she expects everyone to answer. Since then, things have gotten worse. Lindsay has taken to TikTok to call people out for things, and she badmouths anyone and everyone who would even think about questioning her. She tells people if they want to know anything, just ask her. And at TikTok, she said she dares them to ask her. Then when they do, she deletes their question and blocks them. She controls the narrative. So we did what she asked, and we started asking her. We asked her why she wouldn't send Michelle her son's case file. Lindsay always states that she has proof of everything she says, so we asked her for proof of the $11,212 that she supposedly spent out of her pocket on Tanner Barton's case. She has not answered either question, but instead deletes and blocks and then tells her followers she is being harassed. She failed to tell her followers that $10,000 of that money was for a lawyer that she had to hire because she had badmouthed a person and harassed them so much that they filed stalking charges against her. The lawyer she had to hire had nothing to do with Tanner's case, so why is she including that in the amount she spent? If she would be more professional in the way she handles situations and in the way she confronts people, then she wouldn't get stalking and harassment charges filed against her. She then stated she had made 6 trips to Indiana involving Tanner's case. This is also false. She made 1 trip to Indiana to hand Tanner's file to the state police. She did make 2 other trips to Indiana. However, they weren't just for Tanner. It was for 2 marches that she had helped arrange for multiple families. Lindsay and Dwayne had a Justice for Egypt table at one of them, so how can she say they were there just for Tanner? And the other 3 times, they never happened. Maybe she's confusing cases, kind of like she confuses names. Lindsay and her followers, mainly Judy and Jessica, whom Lindsay has spoken very highly of in the past. In fact, she said she was embarrassed to be seen with Jessica and her husband at both marches in Indiana. Well, they have been her biggest drama-filled supporters during this time. They have made up several phone numbers and called my phone at random hours of the night. Lindsay obviously had to have given them my phone number. When I answer, I get called a fucking coward, and then they hang up. Lindsay, of course, has always twisted the story and says me and my wife have been calling her all hours of the day and night, harassing her. Yes, we called the numbers that called us in the middle of the night. They didn't care that they were waking up my kids who had school in the morning, so I was going to give them a piece of my mind. The number I had in my phone as Lindsay's was not any of the numbers that we called back, which proves if she was getting calls, it was because she was calling us from those numbers first. So she was the one making up fake numbers. Of course, when we called them back, there was no answer. The cowards. Lindsay, her husband Dwayne, and her followers have taken to social media to harass, mock, and say cruel things about Michelle and several other people since this has happened. She sent a message to one lady out of the blue, a picture of the burning shirt with a list of names on the screen of everyone who has ever questioned her or left her group. No one initiated this. She just wants to start drama so she can cry and play the victim. She gets on TikTok and talks about trolls on her page, yet her and her friends go on our pages. Lindsay feels she is above everyone else and that she can do anything she wants and say anything she wants. But when it is done to her, it is a different story. I will post the messages on the Victim's Voice Facebook page so you can read them for yourself. Lindsay tells her side of the story, while Michelle shows the true facts in black and white, as you will see from the messages I post and here in our interview. Why does Lindsay think it's okay to re-traumatize and re-victimize a grieving mother only because she won't agree to her money-hungry agenda? A true victim's advocate wouldn't do that. Her followers hear her narrative only. She deletes any comments that go against it. Instead of looking for facts, they believe every word that comes out of her mouth. It has gotten to the point of true harassment from the people in her group. One person, who made a comment that went against Lindsay's narrative, was verbally attacked inside a Walmart by a follower of Lindsay's while he waited for his stepdaughter to get off of work. I also have a review from her page from someone who honestly feared for his life because of the bullying and false narrative displayed by Lindsay. I'm going to read that review to you right now. Lindsay lets her emotions get the best of her. She received a bad review and accused me of posting it. When she realized it was a mistake after rudely accusing me, she posted the last message of our conversation to her page. Since then, I have received countless threats and requests. Her opening line to the post of our message was, "If anything happens to me, look into me and my family." She is making me out to be someone people should be afraid of. If anyone reads the entirety of her messages, the understanding, harmless side of me would have been portrayed. I approached Lindsay very respectfully, and I have all the proof. I never threatened her. I do not deserve this. I will be pursuing legal action against her because at this point, I'm worried for my own safety. She has guided an angry group of people my way, posting my picture and my name. Her methodology is sloppy, messy, and driven by drama to entice and solicit views. It's sad that she's using the trauma and desperation of victims to gain the spotlight. I pray every day that Egypt gets justice and the person or persons responsible get convicted. I pray her family finds peace. I have been quiet for so long hearing Lindsay and Dwayne express their feelings on the case and the personal involving the case, but we have feelings and opinions too. We know things you do not know, vice versa. I apologize in advance if this comes off as insensitive, but there are many people you have guided my way with a tainted view on me that you, Lindsay, created. Lastly, I would never hurt anyone, let alone you or your family. It sounds like her followers are going above and beyond to harass people who don't agree with their leader. The facts are that Lindsay belittles people, calls names, makes fun of, creates memes and TikToks, Facebook posts, and podcasts about people on a daily basis, and calls it exposing people. She states things as facts when they are obviously her opinion, though that is not how a professional would expose people, and a professional would provide proof of what they are saying, which she never does. She isn't an advocate, an activist, a journalist, or a very good podcaster. She is a bully. She actually made another podcast episode just last week featuring me, my wife, and Michelle. And it was another one that was jammed full of lies. In this one, she stated that me and Brandy, yes, she got her name right this time, have sent her 63 pages of harassing messages. Of course, she didn't show any proof because there is none since it didn't happen. I have sent her a handful of messages asking her to send Michelle Tanner's case file and asking to see an itemized breakdown of the $11,212 that she said she spent. She never did provide the proof, send Michelle the files, or even respond to me. The 2 messages she did show that she said were from me were not from me and were not me nor Brandy's phone numbers. Next, she accused me and Michelle of reaching out to Egypt's mother, who had not spoken to Lindsay or Dwayne for over a year because of the drama Lindsay had caused. She said that back in December of 2022, Egypt's mom reached out to them wanting to get together and reconcile. But then Michelle and I reached out to her and told a bunch of lies, and now there will be no reconciliation. Okay, here are the facts. Number 1, I have never spoken to Egypt's mother, ever. Yes, I am on her Justice for Egypt page, and I probably have liked a post or two, but that is it. We have never had a conversation at all. Michelle did not reach out to Egypt's mother either. Egypt's mom reached out to Michelle first on February 26th of this year and spoke for the first time ever on February 28th of this year. Tina had heard about the incident with Lindsay keeping Tanner's case file and wanted to apologize on behalf of her daughter-in-law and son. They talked about mom stuff and about losing their kids and found out they had a lot in common. It was not all about Lindsay as she would like to think. This was 2 months after Egypt's mom had reached out to Lindsay and Dwayne, and there had been no reconciliation yet at that point, but it's Michelle's fault that they didn't reconcile. Number 3, what really happened was after they had talked, Egypt's mom made a post on Facebook saying she had a wonderful conversation with Michelle. Lindsay saw it, and that was it. If she wasn't talking to Michelle, then apparently no one else was supposed to either. The next time Egypt's mom called her, she told her, quote, "Please do not contact me again," end quote, and hung the phone up on her, just because she didn't like the fact that Tina and Michelle had talked. Is she that paranoid that she thinks every conversation is about her, or that childish that she thinks she can tell someone who to be friends with? Maybe it's a little of both. Her followers search our pages where we have a right to say and post what we want, then screenshot it, take it back and post it on Can't Stop Won't Stop's page, and say it's harassment. We aren't harassing anyone or calling anyone who didn't call us at 3 a.m. or stalking anyone. We are exposing Can't Stop Won't Stop for what it is. The same thing Lindsay claims she does every day to people, only we don't just say we have proof, we actually show proof. We are taking all the steps possible to get this crooked organization shut down and shut up. Every day we are contacted by more and more people who have been impacted negatively by Lindsay and or Dwayne. I hope this helps families realize that they can't and shouldn't trust just anyone with their loved one's name. Not everyone who claims to do good and want justice are in it for the right reasons. Can't Stop Won't Stop is definitely not the only organization like this. Anyone can say they are a victim's advocate. This is proof right here. Before you trust these people with important documents, question them and ask for credentials or what training they have. If they don't want to answer the questions that you have, then they have something to hide. Read everything you sign, make copies of everything, and never give someone else complete control over your loved one's story and how it is told. I hope the Covingtons can find some peace while going through the process of the judicial system and finally get justice for their Egypt. And I hope one day there will be justice for Tanner, Alex, Tabitha, and all others waiting for justice. Come check out the victim's voice for the different proof I mentioned today. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new episode covering Tabitha Shuck Rains. Bye.